Alright, so page 1. Part 1, chapter 1, page 1. Big 1 on it. Alright, we paint a picture, a very dark, desolate, we used the word the other day, dystopian society, with regards to what Orwell is portraying here. Look at some of the things just in the first page. Okay? Setting the location. What time is it? What time is it? What's the clock showing? It's showing 13. Military time. It's 1 o'clock. Okay? So does that tell you something? People are referring to clocks and time in military time. Okay? We'll go into greater detail later, but they are always at war. So maybe that's just an easy way to do it. But these things tell you. Okay? He doesn't use the lift. They refer to a lift in England as an elevator. Besides, the power is usually out anyways during the day. You got to conserve the power. Okay, we have hate week coming up. He goes into detail in a little bit about what a 2-minute hate is. Imagine something called hate week. We saw the violence, the tenacity of these people. Even Winston, who upon beginning the 2-minute hate, he's just kind of laid back and blah, 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 but he gets into it and gets into it. Have you ever heard of mob mentality? Okay, people get kind of, it's a mob. Okay, they don't intend to necessarily get violent, but then, hey, riots break out. If you've seen any European football, soccer, by our definition, sometimes things break out and people have been killed where they rush the field right into a fence and they get pushed and pushed in. Those people didn't intend to incite violence. It just kind of builds and culminates. We see Winston his description is 39, but based on his physical ailments, doesn't he appear much older? Okay, if you were to watch the movie, he's very frail looking, and you will see it throughout here. He doesn't eat much. He's saving a piece of bread in his refrigerator for breakfast tomorrow. He doesn't grab water. He grabs some clear gin. They call it victory gin. Have you noticed the term victory sprinkled out throughout here a couple times? Okay, that's the party. Okay, the party, the government, Big Brother is the embodiment of the party, and we'll go into greater detail later on. As he's climbing up the steps, going down the steps, every floor there is always a poster, and that poster is Big Brother, I'm watching you. And it's those eyes that, just like some freaky portrait, you walk into a museum with all these portraits of people, and as you walk by them, it's like the eyes just move. It's like the Haunted Mansion down in Disney World or something. The eyes just follow you. Now the body doesn't move, but the eyes do. And that's probably not a coincidence. I mean, it's intended. Just like the eye on the front of the book. It's intended. It will mean a lot more to us as we go further and further. His basic clothes that he wears. It's not, come to school, dress what you want. It's, I wear overalls. All party members wear blue overalls. So there isn't any flashiness. Ladies, there is no cosmetology. There's just overalls. Beautiful blue overalls. That would be horrendous, I think, over a long period of time. We discovered the thought police. And he goes into greater detail at the very end of the scene about thought crime. Okay, once you commit it, you're hosed. You're done. They might not get you today, they might not get you tomorrow, it might be down the road, but the moment you commit it, they're going to get you. Okay? In discussing the telescreen on the wall, okay, we would call that flat panel TVs now. They're one-way mirrored, okay, in essence, because there's a camera behind it, and audio. It talks about how anything above a whisper can be picked up. Okay? You want to keep your facial features very neutral. You don't want to convey anything. In poker, that's keep a poker face. In essence, that's ultimately what he has to keep at all times. He goes into detail and say that at any time you can be watched. You must keep that mindset, or else things are going to happen to you and you will get vaporized, and so on. Look on page 3. In talking about the different ministries, you will find a lot of contradictions in this book They call them doublespeak. We have the Ministry of Plenty, which really deals with rationing out and having problems with coming up with the exact quantity of requirements. There's a shortage of, at some point, razor blades. We'll get into shortages of chocolate. There always seems to be rationing of something. Wouldn't you think the Ministry of Plenty, they'd be doing a little better job, or be dealing with surpluses and building up a stockpile, things like that. The Ministry of Truth is where Winston works. This is an important place, because as we'll find out, it's a complete contradiction from what they actually, from the title is complete contradiction from what they actually do. Winston's job, as we will find out in greater detail later, it's going and fixing the past to mirror what Big Brother wants nowadays. Okay? So Big Brother's never wrong. If something happens in the world and it's reported on, Big Brother predicted that. Well, I'm not sure. If I went in yesterday's paper, I'm pretty sure he didn't predict. Well, you pull up that paper, it's fixed, because Winston's one of those people who went and fixed it. There is no proof that Big Brother is wrong or fallible. You got to get that notion in your mind. Big Brother is perfect. And that's what they portray to people. And if anybody becomes a radical and goes against him, that person, right? What term did I say yesterday? Vaporized. That's right. Okay, it's not disappear, sleep with the fishies, that type of thing nowadays, and mobsters and stuff. It's, you never existed. That's power. The ability to wipe somebody off the face of the earth, and they never even existed. We go into detail about London, which is the chief city of Airship One. That's what England is referred to, Airship One. And we belong to the superpower of the country, Oceania. So when you hear Oceania, that's England, London, and so on. We will go into greater detail as we go down the road what all constitutes Oceania, because there are three superpowers: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. So Winston belongs to Oceania. So for the purpose of our reading this, we belong to Oceania because we're following the protagonist, Winston, along on his journey. The slogans on page 4, you'll want to commit these to memory. Not that they're very difficult. Okay? War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. Think about those statements. Well, it doesn't seem to make sense. It seems to be contradictory. They are contradictory, but they do make sense, especially in this particular setting. Okay? And we'll go into bigger and more elaborate discussions with that later. The other ministries sprinkled out on page 4. The Ministry of Peace. What's their job? They're in charge of war. Okay. We have the Ministry of Love, Law and Order. What? Get in this mindset. This world doesn't function like our world does. You will find some similarities, though, and that's what's kind of freaky about it. And the Ministry of Plenty deals with the economic affairs and so on, and the shortages and things of that nature. But look at what the scariest one of all is. What does Winston say the scariest one of all is? The Ministry of Love. That's right. Doesn't that just seem to be, wait a minute, Ministry of Love? Look at the physical description of it. It's a really frightening one. There's no windows at all. It was a place impossible to enter except on official business, and then only by penetrating through a maze of barbed wire, entanglements, steel doors, and hidden machine gun nests. So if you were lucky to get through all of these other things, like if you wanted to break in, the machine guns are hidden and they'll take it. I mean, there's been some planning. Something's going on in the Ministry of Love. Okay? And so that's very important, and a lot of foreshadowing happening here. He has his victory gin, his victory cigarettes. He has an ulcer cantankerous thing on his leg. I mean, he's a very unhealthy individual, Winston, on page 5. Everything's victory this, victory that. It's part of the propaganda push of Big Brother. And everything's victory, everything's winning. You support us, things are good. And they keep pushing this stuff to them, pushing this stuff to them. And they use the 2-minute hate, as we'll see, to help perpetuate that notion and that thought. Okay? His journal. The bottom of page 6, something of very interest here. In his apartment, he is on telescreen completely, everywhere. Except he has a little cutout notch, maybe where, a huge filing cabinet used to be, surrounded by walls. And there's a little cubby hole that he is safe. That it's a blind spot. That's a good way of saying it. It's a blind spot. And upon sitting in that spot, he can do what he would like without fear of being spotted. Okay? And so he pulls out this journal. And follow along at the bottom there. He talks about that he had carried it guiltily home in a briefcase, even with nothing written in it. It was a compromising possession. The thing that he was about to do was to open a diary. This was not illegal. Nothing was illegal since there were no longer any laws. But if detected, it was reasonably certain that it would be punishable by death, or at least by 25 years in a forced labor camp. Wait a minute. It's not illegal, but if I'm caught, I'll be executed or sentenced to 25 years. Doesn't it sound like it's illegal? Think about this in real-world applications. If we existed in a world that had no laws, but people can still get picked up and executed, well, who decides that? Is that ultimate power to the police officer or the thought police? There are no laws, so no one can technically break them, but yet people can get picked up and snatched in the night. You think there are the Bill of Rights and everybody has their protections? The right to a fair trial by your peers and all of that? If people can get picked up and detained for, well, they're not breaking laws, but for whatever reason they want, it's kind of a scary situation. Okay? And so he opens it up. To mark the paper, right above where it says April 4th, to mark the paper was the decisive act. Opening it wasn't trouble, but putting the pen to the paper was the ultimate defiance. And remember, Winston has this rebellious nature, this rebellious streak. April 4th, 1984. That's all he wrote. He sat back. A sense of complete helplessness had descended on him. To begin with, he did not know with any certainty that this was 1984. It could be who knows what year. How does he know it's 1984? Because Big Brother says it's 1984. How do we know it's April 4th? Because he says it's April 4th. Remember, you can't go back to the newspapers. You can't go back in the past to find out, I got to check something to see. I think it's this day. You can't look back. Whatever you look back, that's what Big Brother wants you to find. Are you getting this notion in your mind? Whatever you find, it's because Big Brother has allowed you to find it. So that's why he says, well, it's April 4th. I don't even know if it's real April 4th. Well, Big Brother says it's April 4th. It's April 4th. Okay. And then he goes on to tell a story. Okay. He tells a story on page 8. And notice the rambling. It starts off, okay grammar, okay caps. Eventually, all punctuation is thrown out. All grammar rules, capitalization just thrown by the wayside. It's gone. Okay? And look at the story of the movie theater. He uses the term Proles in here. Okay? You'll hear this a ton, so it's important you understand what this is. We use the term nowadays called proletariat. Have you heard that phrase before, that word? Proletariat is the lowest rung, lowest working class, lowest economic impoverished people. And so for short, they call them proles. Okay, so however you need to remember that or write that in your book, do so please. Proles. They show this movie full of party members. Everybody's having a good time. Notice that it was a helicopter is blasting at a boat. It's full of holes. They're laughing at this big man trying to swim as he's being pummeled with bullets. as they're shooting kids and shooting a woman. And he refers to her, oh, it might be a Jewess. Okay, which would be what faith? Jewish. Okay. Now remember, this was written in 1948, just after World War II, right? Remember the big problem? Okay, the big ordeal that they went through? So it might not be an accident that that was thrown in here, just, you know, as a descriptor and so on. There was a middle-aged woman that might have been Jewish, and there was a little boy screaming with fright and hiding his head between her breasts as if he was trying to burrow right into her. And the woman putting her arms around him and comforting him, although she was blue with fright, as if she thought her arms could stop the bullets, trying to protect him. So she's being drilled by bullets, and everybody's being blown apart. But then ultimately the helicopter planted a 20-kilo bomb in among them a terrific flash. The boat went all to matchwood, and then there was a wonderful shot of a child's arm going up, 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 right into the view of the camera. And then there was a lot of applause from the party. Could you imagine nowadays if that was shown? Would our reaction be like that? Seeing kids being shot and slaughtered and a bomb dropped in the middle of them, and they cheer at the cinematic beauty of that arm coming up and then falling back. It's important to understand that this world is not anything like our world, because we, for the most part I would think, would not be cheering. But yet the party members, the supporters of the government, are all cheering. The only person who complains is a prole, the proletariat woman. They shouldn't show this, they shouldn't show this among children, they shouldn't show this, we shouldn't do this, this is wrong, this is wrong. And everybody's like, ah, shut up. Get her out of here, this is ridiculous. So the only person complaining is a prole. Not even Winston. Winston's cheering and having a wonderful shot of the bomb falling in. He's just like the party members. Okay? He's just like them in the 2-minute hate that we see described in a little bit. How he gets, you know, into it. Continuing, we don't see it written out in journal format, but he just, if you've heard of stream of consciousness before, you just put pencil to paper and you just start writing about whatever. You just go, go, go. Now it's probably just typing. And you don't worry about structure. You don't worry about flowing in 5-paragraph essays and things like that. You just go. So he has one, and he thinks back to the morning, and this is where the 2-minute hate is described. There's a woman, a dark-haired woman. Does he like her or hate her? Hates her. Why? Because she's what?
She's a pretty young woman.
Because she's a pretty young woman, and he knows he can't get with her. She wears a sash. Ladies know what a sash is. Gentlemen, do we know what a sash is? Okay, a kind of a ribbony scarf type thing. I'm envisioning it right around her waist. Okay, it talks about how it accentuates her hips and her curves. Okay, you see sashes and stuff, you know, beauty pageants, that type of thing. So she wears a sash. She belongs to an organization called the Junior Sex League. Okay, which means that they don't have sex. Okay, they don't want to waste the time or effort because it detracts from Big Brother and from the party. And so they spend their time not doing that stuff, but helping the cause. And that upsets him. Okay? He sees her as a beautiful sexual being, but she's just throwing it out there. And he doesn't like that. Okay? And he, later on, especially, he goes into graphic details in his dreams and in his thoughts about what he would like to do with her. And really, very disturbing. Okay? And we'll see those down the road. So we see her. Okay? That's important. We see another person that he refers to as O'Brien. He's an upper level party member. What does he do? I'm not quite sure, but it's way up there. That's Winston saying that. Okay? There's something very interesting about O'Brien. At this time, Winston connects visually, and he goes into greater detail later. They share a glance. They don't talk, okay? And Winston has these anti-Big Brother thoughts. He feels something in O'Brien that's similar. He doesn't know what it is, and they shared a glance. It was literally something like, Winston's looking, he sees O'Brien, and then keeps going. But in that moment, they shared something. Okay? Winston perceives something. It's like, maybe you're not alone, Winston. I'm here with you. You know, whatever. Anything like that. Okay? But upon the 2 minutes hate starting up, all of them, the dark-haired girl, Winston, O'Brien, they all sit there and the propaganda begins. They are flashed pictures of the enemy. Pictures of Emmanuel Goldstein, who is in charge of the resistance, the underground movement that I alluded to yesterday. Okay? Anybody can figure out what nationality this individual is? Emmanuel Goldstein? A Jew. Okay? By accident? Orwell pick it? Probably not. Okay? Probably not. You'll see what they've done to religion in a little while down the road. But anyway, so they flash pictures of Emmanuel Goldstein, pictures of the enemy, and they get people all riled up. People throw stuff at the telescreens. People, you know, they take a minute. It's like a 5-minute break each day, but it's 2 minutes. Everybody get your chairs around the telescreen. Okay, we're going to have our 2-minute hate. Okay, we all sit here, very good. Throw things, then it's done. All right, go back to work. You see this in movies and stuff when people get brainwashed, right? Aren't they subjected to all of these different images over and over and over again, and they're sleep deprived and all these things? Every day for 2 minutes, they are reminded who their enemy is. They are reminded that Big Brother loves them and supports them. Because upon finality of all of that stuff up there, there's Big Brother's face. Almost like a savior. Right? I love you. Big Brother. And people, and this is what kind of is spooky to me, they start kind of chanting. B, 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 B. Can you imagine everybody? Especially if they start rocking and moving around. Maybe like Avatar when they're trying to bring Jake back, you know, and Grace back, and everybody's sitting there, oh, you know, and they're just kind of rhythmically moving. It's kind of like, oh, okay. Temple of Doom, before they pull the heart out of the guy's chest, everybody's, they're all doing their thing, right? Those that have seen the movie know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, one person going B, B, you're like, whoa, that's weird. A whole row doing it, a whole class doing it, and you're getting it. I mean, it's probably pretty powerful. And you can see how Winston can get swept up in that. Even though he has his reservations up here, it's almost intoxicating to pull them in. And it succeeds and pulls him in. We see the brotherhood described at the bottom of 13 and 14. They discuss a mythical book. What's the title? There is no title. It's the book. It's really kind of like the Bible of the brotherhood. Okay? We don't even know how many people are in the brotherhood. No one knows. They don't know where Goldstein is. Rumor is he's around amongst us with resistance cells. Rumor is he's gone away. Who knows where he's at? There's just a lot of mysticism surrounding the brotherhood. Can you see how that might be intoxicating for somebody like Winston who feels that he's a loner in his society to want to be a part of that? And you will see that as well as we go. The top of 15, second or third line. At those moments, Winston's secret loathing of Big Brother changed into adoration, and Big Brother seemed to tower over him, invincible. And so that's where, throughout all of this hate and everything, he is turned. Almost like a switch is flipped. Okay? There's probably still some sort of mind games going on that I know I shouldn't be doing this, but yet he can't control himself. And it's that ability to not control himself that may or may not get him into trouble as we get going. The chanting on 16, B, 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 and so on. 17, if you missed this or didn't get this far, shame on you, but definitely pick up and get through this section. 17, this is that moment that they shared that glance. Okay? And that glance of maybe their guard was down for a split second, or Winston's was, but he saw something, and that will come about as we get going. Page 18, he comes out of this. This was all a free writing. This was all just subconscious, just going. And he comes out of it, and he looks down at his paper, And he's written down the phrase, down with Big Brother, down with Big Brother, down with Big Brother, over and over and over again. He didn't sit down intending to write down Big Brother, but it came out. Uh-oh. I'm done. I've committed the worst crime possible, a thought crime. Okay? He could not help feeling a twinge of panic. It was absurd, since the writing of those particular words was not more dangerous than the initial act of opening it. The next page, whether he went on with the diary or whether he did not go on with it, it made no difference. The thought police would get him just the same. He had committed thought crime. Thought crime was not a thing that could be concealed forever. Sooner or later, they were bound to get you. And then look at this picture he portrays of it. They always come in the night. They always grab you and take you away out of your bed when you're not paying attention. It was at night, the sudden jerk, the light in their face as you're pulled out. People simply disappeared. You were ultimately abolished, annihilated, and here's our word. Did you circle it? Vaporized was the usual word. He continues on in his diary. They'll shoot me, I don't care. They'll shoot me in the back of the neck, I don't care. Down with Big Brother. They always shoot you in the back of the neck, I don't care. Down with Big Brother. And as he writes that at the door, his response, already? They got me already? He said sometimes, they might not get you now, they might get you down the road, who knows how long, maybe years down the road, but they're going to get you. He finishes a sentence. Oh, God, I am such a loser. I get picked up right away. And that's where the first chapter ends. Kind of a little cliffhanger. Okay? Now the second part, much shorter. We find out right from the beginning, it's not the thought police. It's his neighbor. Okay? A woman named, we'll call her, what's her name? Mrs. Parsons. Okay? Mrs. Parsons has a couple of kids. She needs help with some plumbing. And so Winston goes down to help, fix the sink, do little chores here and there that she needs help with. Her husband, we will meet him later. He'll just be referred to as Parsons. Down the road, he is a big-time supporter and organizer of festivities for the party. Yay, the party. Big time into it. The interesting thing to focus on in this particular section is the role of the children. Okay? Anybody remember what the name of their organization was?
Spies.
The Junior Spies. Very good. Okay. Just like we had the Junior Anti-Sex League, now we have Junior Spies. Their schooling and their upbringing is focused with the one principle of serving Big Brother and finding criminals, finding people in violation of the non-existent laws, finding people who are against Big Brother. Who are the children's main people that they're around all day? When you're kids, when you were younger, who's the main people you're around all day? Your parents. And so all of a sudden, all of the kids are being indoctrinated with this, we need you to spy on your parents for us. It's for the party, okay? Okay. It was great satisfaction and pride in order to do so. Listening at doors, late at night, trying to pick up mom and dad talking covertly about Big Brother in a negative way so that they could bust them. Okay, Parsons' kids, they're a little upset with Mommy. Mommy does not allow them to go out to an activity outdoors. Ma, I want to go. Why can't we go? What's the activity? A public execution. Does that paint a picture of this society for you? If that movie didn't do it, did this, and their kids, bratty kids, throwing a fit because they can't go watch somebody be hung and killed. Kind of freaky. That's the picture, guys. That's the paranoia. Parents live in fear of their kids. How crazy is that? They have to tiptoe on eggshells around the kids that they brought into this world. And those kids' main goal is to catch you. Always on the lookout to catch you. Winston leaves. The kids accuse him of a thought crime. Oh, you're a thought criminal. Freeze! I got you. You know, like little kids with guns, you know, stuff like that. And he was worried for a moment. For a split moment. And then he goes back to his room. So the presence of these children, the presence of the brotherhood, we see the paranoia that Big Brother and the party instills in the culture and the society. Okay? We see what happens. They come and grab you in the night and take you away. You disappear. You are vaporized. Very integral pages. If you didn't get through these, you've got to go back and get through these. Because his actions or his inaction at time, it's because of the stuff laid out in these pages. Page 29. 29. Winston has these dreams. Okay, and he has them a lot. Whether he's awake, okay, and he has these visions of, the dark-haired girl, where he wants to, assault her and bash her brains and kill her. These other violent images. Or he has full-fledged dreams. And a lot of these dreams are of his past. Okay? As we go about this, you'll see that his past is kind of foggy in his mind. He doesn't even know how old he is exactly. I think I'm this. I think I'm that. Well, it's whatever Big Brother says I am. You know what I mean? And so he can't quite remember fully what everything is, unless Big Brother tells you. And so we have... I lost my spot. Excuse me. His mother. And so he starts having flashbacks, and you'll see this a couple times where he has memories of his mother. And they're very faded memories. Very scraps and pieces here and there. If you've seen movies where people suffer from amnesia, remember that means they just kind of... Maybe they got hit in the head and then they forget who they are. They don't know who their family is. And then slowly things start coming back. And then there's usually this big moment, I remember. Right? It's very similar to that. Because he will have a wake-up, an awakening later on in the book where things start to make sense. And all of these images. Okay? Because he even has a dream about O'Brien. I'm not sure if I even mentioned that the other day. About having this conversation in his dream that he says, we'll meet again in a place where there is no light. Does that sound familiar? Okay? These are things, these dreams that start, they just seem dreams, but they take significance. So as he talks about them, mark up your book and keep track of them because they're pretty relevant. You might not know it now, but if you read a second time through it, another exposure, these things start coming out like, oh my goodness. Oh, how did I miss that? Wow, look at all this foreshadowing. But first time through, foreshadowing is sometimes tricky to pick up on. So he has a dream of his mother. We'll spend more time with her later on. But he has a dream of what he refers to as the golden country. Just this beautiful meadow landscape surrounded by trees, kind of isolation. He's in isolation away from the city and mainly away from Big Brother. Okay? He's not alone. Who's with him? Who's with him? The dark-haired girl. So this is turning into a romantic dream in a way. Okay? They eventually do get intimate with each other. But notice there's one part where he is... What's the word? He is... It's going to be a better example than what I have. Top of 31. Let's just read it. The girl with dark hair was coming towards him across the field. With what seemed a single movement, she tore off her clothes and flung them disdainfully aside. Her body was white and smooth, but it aroused no desire in him. Indeed, he barely looked at it. What overwhelmed him in that instant was admiration for the gesture with which she had thrown her clothes aside. With its grace and carelessness, it seemed to annihilate a whole culture, a whole system of thought, as though Big Brother and the party and the thought police could all be swept into nothingness by a single splendid movement. So not only did she get naked in front of him, he wasn't really, into that. He was more excited about how she pulled off her clothes and just chucked them to the side. That act of defiance. Because remember, we established that, romance and sex doesn't happen. Marriage and sex do, but it's for the purpose of procreating little party members. And we'll establish that more and more as we go. Okay, but there is none of this lust and feelings. And so for her to take that off, yes, she's naked in front of him and he's attracted to her, but he was more attracted by the way she just kind of get rid of these overalls, the clothes of the party, and chucked them to the side. Okay? That's very important. Okay? It's the act of rebellion that is so intriguing to him, not necessarily the copulation. Okay? Okay, as he's having these thoughts, he mentions the physical jerks. Just the morning calisthenics. You see this in the military. You hear a trumpet reveille to wake up, and then people go out and you see everybody doing their jumping jacks together. Okay, now he's in his room doing his, bending over, touching his toes, all these different things. And so as he's going through the physical jerks, that's where he's having these visions and these thoughts. It happens to me almost every time I have to read a textbook or some really long reading that I'm not excited about. I start dazing and thinking about other things. And then you wake up 4 pages later like, well, I read them. I mean, you knew your eye was going. It's not like you were sleeping and turning the page. You were reading, but you know nothing. Okay? Have you guys been driving before? And then a mile down the road, you're like, I don't remember passing the Y. Because you were so focused. Most of you are busy, hopefully not busy doing this, but your mind is completely tuned out to what's going on. And you're just driving 45 miles an hour behind a ton of steel, not paying attention. You know what I mean? That's what's scary. Okay? And that's why people with sleep deprivation, those big semi-trailers, you heard about these people falling asleep at the wheel causing wreck because they drive for 18-hour shifts or whatever, and they just kind of fall asleep. And well, in the movie Cars, Mac, that's how they end up in Radiator Springs, right? Those little Fast and Furious hot rods going, he's dozing, and they play Kenny G, and that puts me to sleep every time. Pixar, very relevant to 1984. You like how we get there sometimes? Page 34, a very important key moment. I told you that Winston was different than most people. He's not as gullible as most people. Okay? How I mentioned, every time you go back in to research the past, you're going to find what Big Brother wants you to find. Okay? You're not going to find something that Big Brother didn't know about. Everything was placed or fixed or amended by Big Brother. And so when he talks that at this moment, for example, in 1984, if it was 1984, Oceania was at war with Eurasia and in alliance with East Asia. So I wrote it up on the board. Okay? In no public or private utterance was it ever admitted that the three powers had at any time been grouped along different lines. So if we go back, how long have we been at war with them? We look back history books and everything. Everything you find will tell you that we've always been allied with East Asia and Eurasia. They're our enemies. So we've done this forever. Okay, we've been at war with these people. There's nothing that you can find that says you were at war with anyone else. Okay? But here's the important part. Actually, as Winston well knew, it was only 4 years since Oceania had been at war with East Asia and in alliance with Eurasia. So he knows 4 years ago it was flipped. People we call our friends now were actually our enemies, and then vice versa. He knows for a fact, but there's no proof. There is no physical proof. And so then he goes on to talk later on in this book, especially in this scene and so on, about you have to have a double think. He knows that that's not true. That has not always been that case. But he has to accept it as true. You understand the double aspect there? You have to fully believe that, or else you could get in trouble. But he knows something else, which is the ultimate real truth. That second paragraph, the frightening thing, skip down to the bottom. If the party could thrust its hand into the past and say of this or that event it never happened, that surely was more terrifying than mere torture and death. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the ability to make somebody, make them vaporize them. Okay, but this is on a bigger scale. Changing history. Okay? He knows that Big Brother wasn't around in the 40s. But if you look up any textbook, Big Brother was there. Big Brother was responsible for creating flight. But he knows Big Brother wasn't around before the 50s. He knows for a fact. But yet, I can't prove it. If I go up to a friend and tell him, I go, oh, okay, well, show me. Okay, fine, I'll believe you, show me. But you can't prove it. It's just in your mind. That's where frustration is. I think I stopped you guys at the bottom of 34. Who controls the past, ran the party slogan, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. Think about that. Look over those words. Who controls the past, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. Do you see how it's almost like a figure eight, and it just kind of keeps going back and forth? Whoever's in charge, and the power that you wield. Because controlling the past, you ultimately get to dictate what the future is. And whoever's in the present gets to control that past, which that past controls the future, the present controls the past. You see how it plays out? Just kind of like the infinity sign, right? Why do you think the infinity is a figure eight on the side? It's never ending. It's just looping. It just keeps going back and forth, back and forth. Okay. And that doublethink on the top of 35, you want to make a mark of that. I've already mentioned that. It's that ability to believe one thing while still holding on to the truth underneath. He goes on to talk, I think it's in this chapter, about the one time that he had. Does this sound familiar? The one time that he actually had proof? Maybe that's not yet.
Like it mentions
the picture.
It just breaks off.
Okay. That will go into greater detail down the road, but make a mark there. He says, at one time, I actually had proof in my hand that Big Brother was a lie, that there was something being fabricated. I'm thinking, dude, that's your job. You do that every day. Right? We read that in chapter 4. But he actually had something. And we'll go into that detail later when we see the picture, or I guess we technically don't see a picture. When he goes into greater detail about the story and the conspiracy covering up that picture, which is pretty interesting. Bottom of 36, 37, he's going through his, what they call the physical jerks, and he snapped out of his stupor. Smith! Screamed the shooter's voice from the telescreen. 6079, Smith, W? Yes, you, bend lower. At any time, you must be under the idea that you could be watched. And something caused the operators, you've seen the old school telephone operators. They sit at a desk, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're just constantly plugging these wires. Okay, I'll connect you. And they do all this stuff. Just imagine, Vegas. Have you seen those, hundreds of screens? Imagine somebody just sitting there watching these, maybe with a clipboard, and they see everybody doing their exercises. Okay, everybody's good. What's this person doing? Who is that? 3079 Smith Winston. Hey, you! Bend over farther. Now! That's freaky. We were talking in my other class, I don't know if I mentioned here, the hackers nowadays have the ability to hijack into your system and initiate your webcam. Have you heard of this before? Did I talk about that in here?
Schools have done it too.
Yeah, schools have too. But they got in trouble. But people can hack into your system. You could be sitting there doing homework, watching my lectures, whatever, and then all of a sudden, the webcam comes on, and you are being watched. You're putting on a show, and you have no idea. That's kind of freaky, and and that's what happens. 1984. That's happening all the time, and you must be underneath. You must be thinking that this could be viewed. So if what we are is 1984, you should assume that your webcam is on all the time. Somebody in the other class goes, well, I just put black tape over my webcam. I said, that's a great idea. Or unplug it. If you can. Some of them are embedded.
Built into my laptop.
See, I made some, people are like, okay, I'm not going to use that. They're starting to get paranoid. I'm not meaning to scare you, but yet, look at Winston. Look at what's happening. And the woman who's leading him, look at what she says. Come on, touch your toes. I'm 39, I've had 4 kids. 4 kids. I can touch my toes. What's your excuse? Come on, we should be in shape. And then she turns it into a propaganda piece. Look at what she says. Look at how she goes into detail about the fighting people. We can only do so much. They're really making the effort. Support your soldiers. Do all of this. It's everybody unified together. Okay, everybody unified together. We don't all have the privilege of fighting in the front line, but at least we can all keep fit. Remember our boys on the Malabar front and the sailors in the floating fortresses. Can you hear how that is a propaganda support piece? And every morning you get to hear that. Every day you get the 2 minutes of hate, reaffirming who your enemy is. In case there was any confusion as to whom you should thrust your angst upon. Okay? And so we kind of have a wake-up call, like, we're listening to all of these stories and his dreams and everything, and then we're snapped back into reality that you are being watched and you need to be careful. Okay? He talks about throwing on a face of... His face remained completely inscrutable. Never show dismay, never show resentment. A single flicker of the eyes could give you away. Doesn't that scare you? Think about that. I tell you guys of an assignment you have to do tonight. Can you keep your face completely from passing on your emotion? I want you to read 100 pages before tomorrow. I see eyes roll. I hear, you can't do that. You must just, yes ma'am. Whatever. But further. And he says he touched his toes for the first time in years. I'd probably pull a hamstring. Okay? But that's the thing. You cannot. You have to disassociate yourself. Cut your emotions off. Okay? And everything's good. Chapter 4, page 37. Now we see Winston's job. We talked about him working at the Ministry of Truth. Okay? His responsibility is sit at a desk. You know what those air tubes, that they have at the bank, you put in your little thing. Some pharmacies have them. Goes out to your car and so on. So he sits there until something shows up. Look at page 38. Did you have problems reading that? Yes. Did you spend the time to try to figure it out? No. Well, let's do that. Look at 38. It tells you times. It's probably the name of the publication. Gives you the date. What's the date? March 17th. BB. Whoa, wait a minute. Weren't we just chanting that the other day? BB. BB speech. Mal reported. Mal, bad reporting. You must fix a bad reporting at Africa. So a speech, bad reporting about Africa, rectify, which means what?
Like a formal change.
Correct. Change it. Fix it. Somebody made an error in bad reporting. You need to go back to this date, this Times Magazine newspaper, and make a correction. Okay? The very interesting thing is, what does Winston do upon completing it? He completes it. He sends the correction away. What does he do with this piece of paper? There's a little hole by his desk. It's called a memory hole. Oh, so you can save all of these for future cataloging? No, so it can be incinerated. What has he just done to any proof that any correction had ever been made? It's gone. You open up a draft of whatever paper you're working on. You change two little things. You hit Control-S. Boom. You just automatically saved it. Is there a record of that document without those changes? No. You just burned it unless you change change your name of the file. But you keep everything the same. If I look at it, I can't tell that there was any change. It's gone. You like that term, memory hole? Maybe where memories go to die or something. But it seems like we have all of this, contradictory terms and so on. I think it's only fitting that it's called memory hole, don't you? So then the other ones. The next one, the same type of thing. What's the date on the second one? Right. Go look up the December 19th from 1983, where we have a 3-year forecast. The fourth quarters, there must be misprints, and so on. Fix them. correct them. Okay? Comrade Ogilvy, page 46. Did he exist?
He does now.
He does now. He is as real as Winston, as real as Big Brother. And I love the last line of this part, and we'll go back and talk more, but the very last line that says, Comrade Ogilvy, who had never existed in the present, now existed in the past. And when once the act of forgery was forgotten, he would exist just as authentically and upon the same evidence as Charlemagne or Julius Caesar or ... any other famous person you can think of. Okay? Anybody. Can you see the strength in that? The strength, the power. Shakespeare, maybe he never even existed. Maybe he was created, just like this guy. And look at the life that this guy led, right? Look at how he didn't want to get married. He was a member of the Anti-Sex League. At 19, he had designed a hand grenade, which had been adopted by the Ministry of Peace, and which, at its first trial, had killed 31 prisoners. Yeah! Not only did he make a great grenade, but it took out a lot of enemies on his test subjects. At 23, he had perished in action, pursued by enemy jet planes while flying over the Indian Ocean with important dispatches. He had weighted his body with his machine gun and leapt out of the helicopter into deep water, dispatches and all, so that the enemy couldn't get him or the dispatches. He didn't want to get married and have kids because he didn't want that to distract from his energies for Big Brother. He was very fit, and he died a hero. See this propaganda piece? How this has turned out? Now everybody will want to be. We have these posters. You know, Uncle Sam wants you. Remember seeing those? Uncle Sam wants you. It's not too far to think that maybe in the next day or the next week, there are posters plastered with Comrade Ogilvy's face on it. And they have art. They can create Photoshop, right? Maybe not Photoshop in 1948, but figure it out. And all of a sudden, there's Ogilvy going, I want you. Be like me. But that dude never existed. Oh, wait a minute. Let me look up all these records. Well, he did exist. He was a member of the Junior Anti. Yeah, he designed a hand grenade. He did all of these things. Doesn't that just blow your mind? That somebody that never existed now has all of this, that he did exist. You just made fiction fact. And there's no proof, none at all, that you're lying. And said Winston, once he forgets it, he'll be just as historically significant and relevant as Caesar and so on. How freaky, huh? Part 1, Chapter 5. We meet, he calls them friends right off the bat. Sime, Simi, whatever you want to call them. But he quickly retracts that and calls them, no, they're not really friends, they're kind of comrades. Kind of like, so-and-so might not be they're not friends. I mean, I'm not socially friendly with them, but I don't hate them. I mean, it's just kind of like, they're an acquaintance. Maybe I tolerate them is another way of looking at it, okay? And Sime is how I'll pronounce his name. Sime is very much like that, okay? He's just a motor mouth, a mile a minute, talking. But the interesting thing about Sime is his job, okay? He's in charge, well, not in charge, but he works with a group of people and focuses his attention on the Newspeak dictionary. We're working on the 11th edition, the definitive edition. It's going to be awesome. But unlike our dictionaries now, where each year there's a news story where they add in, you know, we just added in 80 new words into the dictionary. We just added this. A handful of years ago, there was an article that Homer Simpson's dough, D''O', dough, that is in the dictionary now. Okay? And so they add them. Here, they work on getting rid of them. Gone. And we'll talk about that in greater detail. before we get to that, on the bottom of 48-49, Simon is hitting up Winston for a razor blade. Winston lies and says he doesn't have any. He's been rationing them and saving them. This is important because we talked about the ministry of Ministry of Plenty earlier. Okay, there's always something that is being rationed, things that are scarce, and people have to go and dig around in black market or the free market they call it to try to locate some of these goods. They say that it could be anything from buttons to wool, and now it's razor blades. In a little bit, we're going to talk about chocolate, okay, which doesn't seem that crazy, but yet with the reports from one day to the next, it kind of makes you remember, oh yeah, the whole doublethink. You've got to fully believe what the party wants, even if you have other thoughts and so on. Simon 49. His mocking eyes roved over Winston's face. I know you, the eyes seemed to say. I see through you. I know very well why you didn't go to see those prisoners hanged. Simon was venomously orthodox. He would talk with the disagreeable gloating satisfaction of helicopter raids on enemy villages, the trial and confessions of thought criminals, the executions in the cellars of the, remember, Ministry of Love? There are executions in the Ministry of Love. Remember the whole contradictory terms? Talking to him was largely a matter of getting him away from such subjects like that he likes to talk about and entangling him, if possible, in the technicality of Newspeak, because that's where he's very proficient, and even Winston says entertaining. He's pleasurable to listen to, talking about when he gets going on that. But if he starts going on and on about government and Big Brother and all these things and the stuff, that bores Winston. He doesn't want to talk about it. It makes him feel, guilty about his thought crimes and so on. And so he tries to steer the conversation. You ever had a friend or acquaintance like that? They're just very much opinionated about one subject. You're like, that's great, but let's talk about something else. Okay? I have dozens of people that are like that. I'm like, all right, let's talk about band. How'd band do this weekend? Just to get them off, their straight focus. Good. His 11th edition, the bottom of 50 on to 51. The very top, he goes, we're destroying words. Scores of them, hundreds of them every day. We're cutting the language down to the bones. The 11th edition won't contain a single word that will become obsolete before the year 2050. It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words, he goes on to say. And that kind of contradicts and conflicts everything that we have ever thought and through school, things like that. And so to hear this person just so passionate about the destruction of words and so on. He goes on to give you some examples. If you have a word like good, what need is there for a word like bad? Just say ungood. Or, hey, double plus good. It sounds weird, but think about all those synonyms for excellent, awesome, cool, all those other things. Just, double plus good. Takes care of all of that. See all of those things that we can get rid of? Deleted. It's like on your Word document. You highlight something, you have a whole paragraph, you take the middle sentence out, highlight, delete, boom, gone. Like it wasn't ever there. Same type of thing here. And so that's been their philosophy and so on. He goes on 52, you don't grasp the beauty of the destruction of the words. Do you know that Newspeak is the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every year? Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? And that's the most important element. Not, oh man, they're just getting rid of words to get rid of words to get rid of words. No. Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words to express it. That's the key. Think about that. Big Brother is able to take out words. How can you rebel? How can you be a rebel when the word rebel doesn't exist? Take a moment and let that sink in. You have all these feelings and thoughts, but you can't articulate them. You can't write them down. You can't discuss them with your peers and other rebels. If the words are not there to convey a message or a purpose, that purpose doesn't exist. If a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to listen, that kind of similar type thing. Doesn't make a sound. Well, the physics tell you yes. But 1984 aspect is, well, no one is there to hear the sound, so the sound doesn't exist if no one's there to hear it. You see that? It's important to kind of grasp and understand. It's a different way of thinking. At the bottom he goes, not a single human being will be alive in the year 2050. Not a single human will be alive who could understand such a conversation as we're having. The conversation we're talking about right now, 70 years down the road, they won't be able to understand it. It'll be a whole different language because we will have eradicated all of these different words. Language will be completely different. Winston goes, except, began Winston doubtfully, and then he stopped. It had been on the tip of his tongue to say, except the Proles. Because the Proles, as we find out in these next few sections, they're in their own kind of own world, and Big Brother lets them do their own thing. Okay? The Proles are not human beings, he said carelessly. By 2050, earlier probably, all real knowledge of old speak will have disappeared. The whole literature of the past will have been destroyed. Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Byron. They'll exist only in Newspeak versions. Can you imagine reading Shakespeare, but then all of a sudden you go through and put Newspeak and you get rid of all that stuff? It ceases to be Shakespeare. Chaucer. Do you remember when we talked about Chaucer? All of the couplets and everything was a certain amount of syllables and all of that? Go through it and spread Newspeak all throughout. Is it couplets anymore? Is it a certain amount of syllables anymore? No, it ceases to be Chaucer. And so all of those are gone. All of them gone. Here's the key thing what Winston goes on to talk about. One of these days, thought Winston, with sudden, deep conviction, Syme will be vaporized. He's too intelligent. He sees too clearly and speaks too plainly. Does anybody in here watch Survivor? There's always that very first day where they break up the two tribes and everybody's kind of figuring out who's going to be the leader, who's going to be in charge. We need to get our bed and our shelter made so we can go to sleep. And you see people tiptoe. You heard the term walk on eggshells? Okay, it's just they don't want to upset other people. And you see somebody just speak up and they're opinionated and maybe they're a little bossy, telling people what to do. And as a viewer, I feel like, man, you're going to be gone so quick. And you see that reflected in other people's discussions, to the camera and to themselves, like, man, so-and-so needs to chill out. This is the first day. We have 40 days here. What are they? They're bossing us around. I'm not a kid. I'm 40 years old. Why are they talking to me like I'm a kid? This person's 20, bossing me around. There are things like that. You just have this feeling so-and-so isn't going to be around long. And Winston believes that Syme isn't going to be around long because he's too intelligent. He speaks too much. He voices his opinion too much. And people that start to do that, eventually they start slipping up to some degree. And that's what Winston's idea is, what he thinks will happen in the future. And then the bottom of 54, after Syme had gone on even further, he goes, yeah, unquestionably, Syme will be vaporized. And you can imagine Winston just sitting there eating his food, just like chewing, just looking at Syme. Chewing his food, just staring like, dude, you're gone. You don't even know it. That type of thing. And then he keeps going, you're like, oh yeah, undoubtedly, he's going to be vaporized. Page 55, the Chestnut Tree Cafe. If you were to go on my Moodle page, I think there's a link. I think one of Chaucer's main links, one of the big fan sites for this book is chestnuttreecafe.org or .net or .com or something like that. It's a very famous location in this book. Okay, so make sure we understand. You see the term that says the place was sometime. Excuse me. Chestnut Tree Cafe. Yet the place was somehow ill-omened. The old, discredited leaders of the party had been used to gather there, before they were finally purged. Goldstein himself, it was said, had sometimes been seen there. So people who were discredited, people who had fallen out, tend to kind of hang out at this Chestnut Tree Cafe, and it'll come back routinely throughout the next couple parts. So make sure we understand that. We meet Parsons. Remember we met his family in part 2 with his little kids, you know, we learned about the little spies and all of that. So we finally meet him. We see that he is the individual that is out there rallying up support and fundraisers and parties and taking collections from people and making notes in his book to try to build up support for Big Brother and the party. He goes, hey man, I heard my kids gave you a hard time. Yeah, I think they were just upset about the execution. Oh man, can you blame them? Shows the right spirit, doesn't it? He's proud of his kids. Remember how I said that if I were a parent, I would be living in paranoia? But he's proud of his kids. He goes on and says, all that they think about is the spies. Oh, and the war, of course. Can you imagine kids that all they think about? Spying on their parents and for Big Brother and war. These are little kids. They're supposed to be out playing and messing around. But this shows you how the world is completely different. Talk about how some kids found some criminals, some enemies, right in the middle of the page. What tipped them off? The kid was being very perceptive and noticed that the shoes were somewhat different than what we have around here. The shoes, that person must be a foreigner. So they follow him until the patrol can pick them up. Very perceptive of little kids. I'd be even more paranoid than what I was previously. Good. Bottom of 58, really the last couple things I want to focus on and we'll get moving. The bottom of 58, they talk about chocolate rations. Okay, there are some announcements going on. It appeared that there had even been demonstrations to thank Big Brother for raising the chocolate ration to 20 grams a week. And only yesterday, Winston, reflected, it had been announced that the rations was to be reduced to 20 grams. Did you follow what just happened? Winston remembers the news said, oh, well, we're going to be cutting rations by 20 grams next week. That's happening. Okay, understand. But then today the news, oh, good news, Big Brother has decided to raise your allotment by 20 grams. Isn't Big Brother awesome? Yeah, 20 more grams. But do you see that they're right back where they started? Right? But yet Winston, and he says that's the doublethink. In his last line on 59 at the top, he goes, was he then alone in the possession of a memory? Is he the only one that can remember? Because if anybody tries to look it up, what are they going to find? Whatever Big Brother wants them to find, right? It'll look like, wow, he really are giving us 20 more grams. And Syme, the intelligent one, he soaks it all up. The bottom of 58, he soaks it right up. Syme swallowed it. Winston, was he then alone in the possession of a memory? And the last page or two, he goes on to think about more of this stuff, about how sad of an existence it is and all these different things. And then on 61, and this has happened multiple times already in this short book so far. He's thinking during his workouts. He's just lost in thought, and then all of a sudden, bang, you're being watched. They call him out by name. He's having all these thoughts, and then bang, the dark-haired girl is sitting there staring at him. They lock eyes for a moment, and she turns away. The same dark-haired girl that he wanted to do horrible things to. The same one he's fantasized about in the Golden Meadow, and so on. The instant that she caught his eye, she looked away again. The sweat started out on Winston's backbone. A horrible pang of terror went through him. Blah, blah, blah. At the bottom, quite likely, her real object had been to listen to him and make sure whether he was shouting loudly enough with regards to when she sat behind him at the 2-minute tapes. Because he goes on to mention, you know, you have always got to keep your face neutral. You don't want to give anything away. You don't want to commit a face crime. We've had thought crimes, but now we have face crimes, and we don't want to do that. Okay? And he says that, you know, she probably isn't a member of the thought police. She's probably just a spy, like a freelance spy, a mercenary spy. out to get you. Okay? And so that's where he leaves it. 63, we're going to go a little quicker through. He's writing in his diary. But the thing we want to focus on in this diary, and he mentions that on 64, the most deadly danger was talking in your sleep. And we've kind of alluded to that so far. You can't really control that. Okay, people get up, sleepwalk, and eat, and then go back to bed. People get up and go to the bathroom and come back to bed, and they don't even remember it. It's just subconscious. Your body does its own thing sometimes. Your mind does its own thing. But we find out that Winston is married. Where's his wife? It didn't work out. Are they divorced? No. Just separated. Because we talked about, and it's broken into greater detail here, that marriage isn't about love. You have to apply and go before a committee. I would like to get married to this woman. And it says in here that they will pretty much not grant you permission if they sense there's any physical attraction between each other. It's solely for the purpose of making children for the party. Okay? So there is no love, lust, affection in a marriage. It's just all, well, business. Okay? It's all business. He goes into detail about making love with his wife, how horrible it was, how she would lay there all clenched with her eyes closed. But yet she was the one who said, we need to do it once a week. Don't forget, we have to do it this weekend. Don't forget, it's happening tonight. But she didn't enjoy it. They say it's doing their duty for the party. I think there was another term that we used as well. Oh, she called it making a baby or our duty to the party. Circle that one. Our duty to the party. The woman's duty is to make babies, is for the party. Okay? We see Winston with a prostitute. An old, haggard Proles. He would go through with this act, this rebellion. Prostitution was not illegal. In fact, the party actually thought it was okay to get rid of any of those longings and feelings that you just couldn't, suppress. And you just had to get them out there. Go ahead. You can't do it with a party member. They use the term promiscuity. You cannot be promiscuous with a party member. But you can with the lowest class. He says that this parole lady, she just lay on the bed and pull her skirt over her head. And he said the most horrible thing you can imagine, that was that. But he went through with it. He went through with it. Not because he found her attractive, but he was defying something, somebody or something. The party, Big Brother. He uses a term, what he wanted more even than to be loved, page 68. What he wanted more even than to be loved was to break down that wall of virtue, even if it were only once in his whole life. The sexual act successfully performed was rebellion. Desire, that was thought crime. He doesn't want to desire. He just wants he wants to just have an encounter that is in complete rebellion and opposition of what the party stands for. Okay? Part 1, chapter 7. Very, very important chapter. We find out a ton about the Proles, a ton about what Winston thinks of them, a ton about what Big Brother and the party thinks of the Proles. The party is only 15% of the populace. That means the Proles make up 85%. That is like 2.5, 3 of you. The rest of you are all Proles. This whole book, don't we think that the party is in charge? The party has the numbers, the party's controlling the war party? No, it's just these 3 people. The Proles over here. And this is where Winston really struggles, and he struggles throughout the book. Why can't the rebellion come? Look, you have 85%. You can take control and take down the hypocrisy that is Big Brother. But the problem is, you don't know. You don't know or you don't care. Okay? Every time we read this, I instantly think of the movie A Bug's Life. Those ants collect food for the grasshoppers all the time. Flick stands up one time, Hopper, messes them up and they leave. And so you see the grasshoppers having a good time. Remember, they're partying in that sombrero, right? And they're sitting up at the bar, which is just like seeds. And one guy goes, hey, let's just not even go back. Let's just not go back and hop. I had a problem with that. So he took one kernel and goes, does that hurt? He throws it and hits him. No. No, how about this? No. Or how about this? And he rips the thing off the wall and just pretty much kills him. Okay? At the end, the big climax of it is they stand up to Hopper and everybody else. And Flick stands up and goes, we are more than you. We outnumber you. You know that, don't you? And there's this moment where Hopper's eyes just kind of narrow. He doesn't say anything. He just kind of looks around, and that's where, it goes nuts for the rest of the movie and so on. But they have all of those moments and elements of, the dutiful ants just doing their own thing, because that's what we've always done. They're not conscious to what it could be. The Proles aren't conscious to what it could be. And so they are in that rut, that generational rut, that just goes over and over and over again. Okay? The revolution that brings down Big Brother is not coming from the 2.5 people up here. They don't have the numbers. They can't meet. They can't, because people get vanished and vaporized and all that. It has to come from out there. But you Proles will never rise up because you are happy and not happy necessarily. You are content with getting your food for the grasshoppers. Okay? Star Wars and Disney, you can connect so much to life and literature. And that's why at the bottom of 70, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. So they can't learn and understand why they should rebel until after they rebel, and then ultimately, oh, look at what we could do. Well, but it's a weird cycle. You can't do it. You can't catch up with it. It's always going to be ahead of them. Look at page 71. People every year, we start questioning, well, why don't the Proles understand? The party doesn't care about the Proles. How can they, it's 85%. Why don't they care? Why don't they force them to do whatever? Here's what the party thinks about the Proles. 71. So long as they continued to work and breed, their other activities were without importance. Left to themselves like cattle turned loose upon the plains of Argentina, they had reverted to a style of life that appeared to be natural to them, a sort of ancestral pattern, like getting the food for the grasshoppers. They were born. They grew up in the gutters. They went to work at 12. They passed through a brief blossoming period of beauty and sexual desire. They married at 20. They're middle-aged at 30. They died, for the most part, at 60. Heavy physical work, the care of home and children, petty quarrels with neighbors, films, football, beer, and above all gambling filled up the horizon of their minds. Do those traits or those things sound familiar? Isn't that what we do? We get married, 20-ish. You had your brief blossoming, your beauty, sexual desire, fine, you're married, great, middle-aged at 30, you die 60. Physical work all the time, taking care of home and kids takes up all your time. Petty fights with your friends and neighbors, okay? Watching movies, sports, beer, gambling, a lot of little vices here. And they just do that over and over. And then the next generation. So I think what we're seeing is, for the most part, we would be Proles in this society. We wouldn't necessarily be the Winstons or the party members, okay? That's important to understand, okay, that we relate to these people. We related to the Prole woman in the movie theater when they blew up those babies and the kids and, oh, you shouldn't show this to people. Sit down, shut up. No, you shouldn't do this. Remember, she was the one. Because what she was saying and feeling is probably what we felt, I would hope. Unless you're sick and twisted, okay? So to keep them in control was not difficult. A few agents of the thought police moved always among them, spreading false rumors and marking down and eliminating the few individuals who were judged capable. Not that they did anything and held a meeting, it's just, you seem capable. Bye-bye. So if you just sprinkle people out and you take care of those people, you have nothing to worry about. But no attempt was made to indoctrinate them with the ideology of the party. Just let them, like cattle on the, just let them go and do their own thing. Let them worry about sports and drinking and gambling and children and all of these things. Let them have their things. The party, we're in control. Let's keep it that way. Okay? And so this is where Winston struggles with. They will never know that they are being, oppressed until they rebel. But they're never going to rebel because, hey, we're in our rut. We're collecting food for the grasshoppers. Okay, so it's important to understand that moment. Page 72, 73, Winston finds himself looking through a history book, and he's not able to differentiate between what's true and what are lies, because Big Brother would have controlled it. Okay? How could you tell how much of it was lies? The only evidence to the contrary was the mute protest in your own bones. You know that feeling like, it just doesn't seem right. Right? It's not working. Something's wrong. But can you prove it? No. Okay? So Winston holds out. He goes, you know what? Just once, I had something in my hand. Right? Something in my hand. That Big Brother was fabricating the history, was lying. And that's that photograph. On page 74, 75. 74, 75. He had a picture with these three people, Jones, Aronson, and Rutherford. Okay, they disappeared for a year. They come back into the public eye. They're tried for treason. They confess. They're released. They write these articles telling about how horrible they are, how great Big Brothers, all of these things. Okay, and then ultimately, they finally disappear again. But before they disappear the second time, Winston bumps into them where? At the Chestnut Tree Cafe, okay? Because they were those disgraced party members. They're sitting there talking. He looks at them and he mentions about how they look so frail and not like the mountain of men that they were before. It's like they were broken. And there's a song that plays underneath the spreading chestnut tree, I sold you and you sold me. And he notices that they start to cry. And that's the last time he ever sees them. Okay? Now these individuals eventually were, the second time they were arrested, they were executed after confessing to the same old treasons, but even more treasons and more new things that these broken down men that Winston saw in front of them had committed again. Okay, different ones this time. Okay? But this is very important, so pay attention to 77. Make a little note about that, especially about the crying and aspect, because that might come back later for our purposes. But then 78, here is the photo. He has a photo with all three people. On the day that they were convicted and all of that stuff, that they were supposedly flying from Canada to Siberia to undermine Big Brother, to sell secrets to the Eurasians, and everybody else, because we've always been at war with Eurasia, always. But the picture is not from that flight or, Canada or Siberia. It was from New York. The three of them were together at a party function in New York on that date. Here is proof. The moment that it hit him, he puts it upside down, covers it, and backs away like, wow. Because as he goes on to say later on, he goes, it was enough to blow the party to atoms. It was concrete evidence. It was a fragment of the abolished past, like a fossil bone which turns up in the wrong stratum and destroys a geological theory. T-Rexes are always just tropical. They don't have the skin or the blubber to withstand cold temperatures. What if we all of a sudden find T-Rex bones in Antarctica? Do you see how that, wait a minute, what? How were they able to, so it just totally starts to make you question everything you thought about T-Rexes. Now, I understand back then, there weren't the poles, it was Pangea, I understand, got it. But for the purpose of this example, they were in the Antarctic, okay? Because up until now, if Winston ever questioned anything, like, man, shut up and prove it. Prove it. Everything's changed by Big Brother. But now he says, I had a photo one time. Oh, yeah, where is it? Right there. Now that he has that proof, okay, people go, oh, well, if that's a proven lie, what else might there be? And then if that, then what else? And what you see how that rock can pick up a lot of speed? That snowball rolling down the hill gets bigger, you know? But he panics. What does he do with the picture? He memory holds it instantly. Once he calms down and comes back, he doesn't even look at it. He just takes his papers and memory holds it. Hopefully no one saw that. Hopefully no one was watching me, because I had proof right there. And he regrets that, because that is the concrete proof that he's, you know, that could have proven what he said to be true, and made people a lot more skeptical of Big Brother. Page 80, 81, the last couple things I want to talk about, then we'll be done. The very last line, look at the italics. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows. Well, duh, 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's not the point. What if Big Brother comes out and says, no, 2 plus 2 is 5. It's always been 5. I don't know why you're thinking that it's 4. It's always been 5. Well, because look in my textbook. It says that 2 plus 2 is... Oh, it says it's 5. Well, in my elementary textbook, it said 2 plus 2 is 5. 2 plus 2 is 5. Huh. 2 plus 2 is 5. But the freedom is to say, no, it's not. 2 plus 2 is 4. And that's what Winston is probably going to be more capable of doing this than all of those other gullible chocolate lovers, right? Okay. You can do this with other things besides that, like my sweater, blue, right? This is red. This has always been red. It's not blue, it's red. This is red. You have to fully believe that this is red. This is red. Big Brother wants you. This is red. This is red. No. This is blue. That is freedom. If you compromise that, and you say that it is 5, or you say, no, you're right, this is red, you don't have any freedom. And remember, freedom is what? Slavery. Okay? And so we have to make sure that you stay strong mentally, and Winston seems to be the only one thus far. You know, we have Brotherhood and all of those guys, but we haven't met anybody. We just see it through Winston's viewpoint. Okay? 81. Lot of information in this particular chapter. Okay, 1.8. Not only does it provide a setting where, you know, pretty much all, well, not all, but a major majority, it's redundant, where Act 2, or second part, we spend time in with the apartment, but we see a lot of Winston's kind of travels into Prole territory, Prole country, Prole district, whatever you want to call it, and we get to see their way of life a little bit more up close, I think is the best way of saying that. He finds himself walking around, down there on 82. He even throws out the idea, if there's hope, he had written in the diary, it lies in the Proles. We spent a lot of time talking about that recently, about the frustration that he has because they lack the consciousness to fight and revolt. They don't have that. So why will they ever revolt? And they're the only chance for a revolt because the party members, they're way too few. There's no way that they will ever rile up because just the odds of them getting caught are great. As he's walking around in 84 and 85, all of a sudden there's a lot of activity, and we find out that there's a bombing that's taking place. They have a sixth sense to this. Whether they are attuned and they can hear it, they just know. A woman picks her kid up and runs indoors. He throws himself down on the ground. Things explode all around. He gets himself up, dusts off, starts walking. What does he find in the little gutter? Finds a human body part. Just kicks it to the curb and keeps going. This must be normal around there. But remember, he was enjoying that video. Remember the movie theater real early on with all the boat getting bombed and the kids and all that stuff. Maybe he's a bit desensitized to it, but he found a human hand severed at the wrist. He kicked it into the gutter, and he kept going until he went to a pub, a place to drink. Page 85, a real quick mention, but yet it's very significant. Do you remember when we were talking previously how the party keeps the Proles just kind of doing their own thing, like cattle grazing in Argentina? And they talked about how they spend their lives with family and drinking and working and gambling and all of that. This lottery is very interesting. Okay, make a little note here if you kind of breezed over it or you need to go back to it. The lottery for some of these Proles is their life. It is their focal point in discussion. They come up with these theories. You imagine how complex they could get with regards to, well, this number's never won before. This number's won more than anything. It's going to hit again. Okay? Those of you that have probability and stats, you know that it doesn't matter if something's hit 8 or 9 times in a row. It's still, well, depending on what game you have, the odds are the same of hitting something else. Roulette. Okay? Red and black. It's not a 50-50 shot because there's that little green on there, right? That's 0. Some houses, casinos, have double zeros. So they have a 0 and a double 0 to take the probability and the house odds to make them greater and make your odds of winning even lower. I'm not getting into math, but just to let you know, it doesn't matter. I was at a casino, I saw it hit red 18 times in a row. I was not betting. Because if I would have bet, what would have happened? Sure. It would have been black. But some people keep riding it out and riding it out. But shouldn't it go red, black, maybe a couple reds, shouldn't it, flip it heads, tails? Shouldn't it, for the most part, be about equal? Sometimes it runs all reds, sometimes it runs all blacks. That's why gambling isn't a surefire monetary thing. But some people were making some money on it, but not me. So the lottery was really interesting. They didn't spend too much time on it, but it really was their main, for some of these people, the reason to exist. He hits up this old man in a bar, and he wants to talk to him because really the old man in the old generation is the last connection to the world before Big Brother. He says to the old man, surely you were a grown man before I was even born. What was it like? What were these things? And he described, the men in the hats. And you've got to get out of the way. So even the Proles then, the capitalists, the people in charge, the top hats, stovetop hats, they would come walking and you'd get out of the way. Oh, governor, how you doing? Talk to them and so forth. And there was just a social class structure at that point. Okay? So it did exist. But however, his mind is not as attuned to the past as what Winston would like. And Winston's like, I can't read the books. And as we've established, the reason you can't focus on the books is because who wrote the books? Big Brother. Or if he didn't write them, he's amended them and fixed them so that it's a pro-Big Brother stance. So how can you truly believe? So really the last connection is the elderly. Okay, World War II vets. Now, we're quickly losing our World War II vets. Have you noticed that? Okay, when I was alive, we still had when I was younger, we still had World War I vets coming and talking and so on. There were a lot of World War II vets. They were old, grandparents, above grandparents, but they would come and talk. There are very few now. Every year they go out to Pearl Harbor, the veterans of Pearl Harbor, the bombing. Fewer and fewer are going. There are stories where there's only 2 or 3 that are making the trip now because some of them can't make the trip and most of them have died. That was, 70 years ago. And if they were 18 or 19, add 70 to that. How old are they now? They're not going to be traveling a lot. There's not going to be very many of them left, no matter how young they were in the war. So now we're getting to where the elderly for us are Korea, Vietnam. Okay? And by the time you're my age, it'll be, the end of Vietnam or, Desert Storm and that type of thing. When you get when your kids are coming through, that type of stuff. And so your only connection to that past was to hear it from their mouth. Because Big Brother, hopefully, hasn't corrupted their mind and changed it. But he did not get what he wanted from the old man. Good. Page 93. He left the bar and started walking around, and before he knew it, he found himself outside that antique shop. And it's the same antique shop that he purchased his diary. Okay? So he goes, I'll walk in. And as he walks in, the gentleman who works there, Mr. Charrington, he recognizes him, doesn't he? Hey, I remember you before. I sold you a book. Come on in, take a look. Take a look, see what we got here. See what we got here. And it's just like any antique shop you've been to where there's a bunch of old stuff around. And Winston, who likes old stuff, obviously, things that you're not supposed to have, a diary or a book in Big Brother world, he probably is finding a lot of things of interest here. The old man says, I recognize you on the pavement, and so on. Winston finds one piece, a piece of coral. You guys all know what coral looks like, okay, from the ocean. A piece of coral encased in solid glass. And he finds that very interesting. Why? What's that?
I've never seen the ocean.
Maybe he's never seen the ocean. I mean, they live on an island. To some degree. To some degree. Maybe it's a lot different. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe he hasn't. It's not so much the connection to the sea, but how old is that coral? How old? I have it marked here. I think that's right. Yeah. Oh, that's coral, that is. It must have come from the Indian Ocean, middle 95. They used to kind of embed it in the glass. That wasn't made less than 100 years ago. More, by the look of it. So now, why is he interested in it? Matt? Like everything else?
Yeah.
So this has actually existed before. Before what? It existed before Big Brother. This piece of coral was encased. This existed. This is proof. This is something that cannot be changed. It can disappear, right? But it can't change. This coral is protected. The air within that glass, it's protected from the outside. No one can get to it. And here's proof of something concrete that existed before Big Brother. Okay? Way before Big Brother and before the history books and so on. So it's very interesting to him. Okay? It's very interesting because later on we'll talk about that this coral may or may not be a metaphor for somebody else and for something else. And that'll play out in the second part, and we'll talk more about it. But ultimately, the thing that he finds most interesting is go up these stairs, a little apartment for him to rent. And he can afford it. He's not like a millionaire or anything, but he can afford it. And so he goes up there, and he's looking around. Some people used to live here before, but, I'm kind of selling things off a little bit here or there. I'll make some money. You can rent it out if you want. Doesn't this sound like a perfect place for him? What's the first thing he noticed? No telescreens. You walk in a room, you're like, there's no telescreens. Nah, too expensive, never really had the need for them. Wait a minute, you have no telescreens? No, no telescreens. Here's my deposit. You think he's going to love this place? For a man who's always paranoid about being watched, you can come and hang out in a place and do whatever you want with whomever you want, say whatever you want, have whatever meetings. And you don't have to worry about Big Brother. That's going to be a positive. Can you imagine how excited he was? As cool as that coral was, that doesn't even come close to this thing, to this room. And it's awesome. Bottom of 97, some of the other things, there's a bed there. There's a picture on the wall. The frame's fixed to the wall, but I could unscrew it for you, I dare say. So I could take it down if you want, but it's pretty much nailed to the wall, screwed to the wall. Oh, I know that building. It's a ruin now. It's in the middle of the street outside the Palace of Justice. Ah, that's right, outside the law courts. It was bombed, and many years ago. It was a church at one time, St. Clement's Dane, its name was. And this little rhyme, this little limerick, nursery rhyme type thing, plays out. They can't quite remember all the words. Charrington helps them a little bit, but it's just one of those little nagging things like, man, what's that? How does that go? I remember the bells of St. Clement's. Da, 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 da. It's just a little thing. So keep a mark on that. That's something of note. Just like we had that little bit of a, in the Chestnut Tree Cafe, under the spreading chestnut tree, I sold you and you sold me, and they start crying and all that stuff. Somewhat significant. Notice this church that is bombed out is now a museum, used for propaganda displays of various kinds on page 99. So this church has been bombed out, and now, since it's down in the party headquarters almost, downtown there, it's been turned into a museum for propaganda. So the church, bombed out, doesn't renovate as a church, but now it is a museum for Big Brother, for propaganda, and so on. Here, come look at all of our bombs and rockets and so on. Good. Bottom of 100. After he takes it, he's leaving. As he walks out, you think he's in a good mood? He found his coral. Okay, those of you who go shopping, ladies, and you find a really good deal, you're pretty much floating out that door, aren't you? You won't believe the sale I got on this. Hey, if I get a great price on a DVD, I'm excited. Okay? So he's floating out there. He has his coral. He has his new apartment that no one will ever find out about. And as he walks out, once again, snapped back into reality, he sees the dark-haired girl again. She has to be following me. There is no way, no probability that, oh, we just happen to be here again. She just shows up. And instantly, he wants to take that coral and bash her brains in and kill her. Again, those mental images. And he's petrified and scared.